Hello, everybody, and welcome back on in to Conversations. I'm your host, Drew Patrick, and today I am very excited to be joined by SGA President here at Mansfield University, Tony Mastroianni.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I want to start, obviously, this year is unlike any that has ever happened before. What have been the biggest challenges for you as the SGA president in times of a global pandemic?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question.
Yes.
Well, there have been a lot of different things we've had to kind of overcome. I'd say the biggest challenge, honestly, is just the lack of students being on campus is the biggest one. Normally, we have around 900, I think, students here on campus compared to the 370 that we have this semester. So student involvement is at an all-time low right now with people being locked in their rooms on Zoom and not wanting to come out. And it's been very difficult to get events and programs in person with the health and safety guidelines. But we're making do. But I think probably the biggest challenge is not just seeing all these faces all over campus willing to participate in things has been the greatest challenge, yeah.
So, especially with the changes of technology, and I guess with the benefit of technology, though, there's a way to somehow stay connected. But what has been your goal and your way to try and incorporate those students who maybe aren't here or maybe want to stay in their room? What is the goal or what is the strategy to try and get them involved?
Sure. So the way we look at programming this semester, especially with Zoom-style programs, is we want anyone to be able to come, whether they're at home, whether they're here and just want to be in their room, or whatever the case may be. So when we do a lot of these programs that are, a Zoom leadership conference or a Zoom speaker or, a Zoom tribute band or something like that, we want anyone to be able to come. I think the strategy when we do these programs is kind of both, right? So we want to have these programs that are available to students that are off campus, that are on campus but don't want to leave their rooms. But we also want to do programs that are in person with maybe a Zoom component or a hybrid component. So I think the strategy has been to kind of adjust to the new norm while trying to bring things back, and hopefully, things will be better for next semester and be in person again and everyone will be happy. But that's just hopeful thinking. But definitely trying to stay on top of all the students' needs. And a lot of students don't necessarily want to go to the Zoom programs that we offer. It is hard to offer super fun, exciting programs that are on Zoom, but we try our best.
I'm interested as well as a student here, some of the changes of your regular day-to-day that happen here in the classes, a lot of them being the online or maybe some the hybrid. But what has been, from that perspective, the biggest adjustment for you? And then in turn, the fact that you're going through the same thing every other student is going through, how can that help you in your role as SGA president?
Sure. So I guess just to start with the challenges of the new system, I'd say the biggest hurdle I've had to overcome as a student is just getting used to online learning. And I know that's kind of like the cliche to say, but a lot of professors here at Mansfield are not, accustomed to doing their lectures in a Zoom setting or recording themselves and putting things online. A lot of professors have issues with uploading things correctly and whatnot. So I think the biggest challenge has just been that, adjusting to that. And also, I'm not a great online learner. A lot of my classes, I'm a senior, a lot of my classes are just online only. Like no Zoom synchronous, just here's, your assignment for the week, submit it at the end of the week kind of thing. And the learning, I'm not really learning as much as I would be if I was sitting in the classroom listening to the professor, taking notes, studying for tests, that sort of thing. So I think that's been the greatest challenge for me as a student is, trying to focus on teaching myself instead of being taught. And then the second question Can you repeat it really quick?
It's just so taking that and having your experience, letting that or really be a guide to how you run with SGA and the support you guys can offer.
Yeah, I think kind of bouncing off of that, one of the biggest things that I've had to deal with last semester was burnout, and it was very fast. And I think a lot of students felt the same way with being inside, being on Zoom, is I just felt like I didn't want to do anything. And that was me being the SGA president and a resident assistant. I'm like, man, I'm done. So it was definitely difficult to overcome that. And I think that's kind of, especially this semester, what I want to focus on is doing programs, doing events, doing things that prevent burnout. I think that's huge. One of the things, I guess, just from a policy perspective is I brought the idea of wellness days to the faculty assembly and faculty senate, which is just a couple days off in the semester since we don't have spring break, where students and faculty can unwind and reset themselves. I think preventing burnout is number one priority this semester.
Yeah, I can definitely understand what you mean by that burnout. Just we felt it all around as staff and faculty here as well. So I want to touch on that burnout thing, because along with that, maybe during this pandemic, something that has come to the forefront has been mental health and just the focus on mental health. Have you seen more of a push in your office with students more than, say, you could have in the past?
I definitely think Mansfield as a whole pushing more mental health awareness has been, and just college in general, not just Mansfield, has been definitely a bigger push this through the pandemic. From SGA's perspective, I mean, we always are there to support our members. We personally haven't pushed out a lot of mental health programming because we're not, super expert on that. But we want to do stuff like that. Obviously, work with the, mental health services here, the counseling center, and maybe we will do something like that. But I definitely think there has been a surge in mental health maybe not problems, but issues with students. I think that there has been definitely a surge in that with either being depression or anxiety with the pandemic. I'm actually writing a paper about how stay-at-home orders affected college students and how it made the depression, physical activity go down, and depression seemed to increase in these students. So I think that goes for any student.
Yeah, it's definitely this weird, I don't want to say double-edged sword because that's not the expression I'm thinking of here, but it's interesting that, people have been more affected with anxiety, with depression in just times of unknown, and then that benefit, and I use that in quotes, that it's being more seen and more accepted and more understood than it has in the past. It's very interesting. So, Tony, I want to talk about you a little bit. What was it that made you interested in SGA, in student government?
In student government, okay. So when I was in high school, I was in Future Business Leaders of America, or FBLA. It was just a small club that we had. I went to Tunkhannock High School. Shout out to them, I guess. But I was the treasurer there. And then when I got to Mansfield, I knew I wanted to be in a leadership role. I wanted to do something and change something. Mansfield, the benefit about Mansfield was that it was a small enough campus where I thought I could change something or be a part of something, instead of like a big campus like Penn State where you're kind of like, the needle in the haystack. So I definitely wanted to get involved. And then during orientation, I believe the dean of students at the time was like, if you want to be a leader, join SGA. And I was like, well, that's a really cool idea. And when I joined SGA at the time, well, it was in person, but it was very, I want to say like secret society. It felt like when I joined, I like had to present myself like, I was an interview with like all these people. It was very serious, which it still is now, but we definitely made it a little bit more casual for students so the students don't get scared. But I thought that was interesting. And since then, I mean, I've been a part of it since I was a freshman. I was parliamentarian before my sophomore year. I was vice president in my junior year, and now I'm president now. So, I mean, it's just always been something interesting to me, and leadership positions have always been something I take part in.
Was that a big push of yours to get that more serious tone to come back a little bit?
Yeah, I think it was me and the previous president, kind of to make it less of a secret society where, you need to know all this stuff. We follow Robert's Rules of Order, which can be very scary for students. They have to motion for things and all this other stuff. We still follow all of that, but it's definitely less, like that kind of vibe. It's more laid back, but also serious, but also accepting. I think that's been the biggest push for me, is just accepting anyone who's willing to give their voice, especially when student involvement is at an all-time low. Since I've been president, that's been a huge push, is if you want to come to SGA and voice your opinions and make something happen, please, we'll accept you.
So I'm interested, because that kind of leads to my next question here, which is, in terms of growing through the ranks and developing a leadership style, what would you say, or how would you describe your leadership style as president, or even slowly rising up?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say my leadership style has always been, actually a really good thing to explain this would be, I don't know if you've ever heard of Strengths Quest, Strengths Finder. We've had to do it as resident assistants and stuff. Basically, you take this test online, and then it gives you your top 5 strengths. And my top 5 strengths are adaptability, communication, includer, relator, and restorative. So I think kind of relating my leadership style to those top 5 strengths, I've definitely always been someone who can adapt to a situation and prioritizes communication. But just being that relator and includer is something that I've really strived for, because when I was a freshman, especially when I joined SGA, I mean, I had someone in SGA who was kind of pick me up and was like, hey, do this, this, this. His name was Lee, Sung-Ho Lee. But if I didn't have that person, I don't know, where I would be technically. I may not have even joined SGA if he didn't kind of guide me. So I think guidance and leading people in the sense of including them, being there for them, relating to their experiences, that's kind of the leadership style I go for, if that makes sense.
The important part of inclusion there that is interesting is obviously, you're at a university. In high school, you said you did some stuff there with the future leaders. Everyone's from the same area, so everyone has the same experiences. Have you noticed that has helped in terms of your leadership style, that you go to school at a place where people are coming from all walks of life to come here? How has that affected that side of your leadership style?
I definitely think that when I first got here, I mean, I'll be honest, Tunkhannock is a very small place, rural, not much diversity happening in that area. So when I came to Mansfield, it was all kind of new to me, learning, new cultures and educating myself on diversity, equity, and inclusion was this huge thing I was not aware of at all in my small hometown. So that was actually a big thing for me, was learning to kind of not necessarily step in the shoes of others, but understand the struggle that others go through, especially people of color and people of different ethnic backgrounds. And understanding that struggle was huge for me as a leader, I think, because understanding that, not everyone went to Tunkhannock Area High School and grew up this way and had this kind of stuff was a realization that I needed to come to terms with as a leader, to be you are who you are, and you're important to be in this position, in SGA. We need your voice. We need more voices from all different walks of life. If everyone had the same voice, then your voice wouldn't be that important. So
it's interesting there too. With that, and with the growth you've seen there, and the growth you said you experienced there, How then do you try to pass that growth ability down to people who are wanting to follow in your footsteps?
I think with my leadership style, I've always tried, like I said, to include and relate. I think when it comes to other members of SGA, say someone who I think would be a good prospective president, I always I would try to mentor that person as my president did before me and kind of expand their knowledge. And a lot of the people here, I mean, that I found are very welcoming in that sense of, all walks of life. I mean, I'm sure there's people everywhere that are, mean or whatever, but Mansfield's community has always been very nice in my eyes and very accepting and welcoming. I know when we did, it wasn't SGA, it was a different organization, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, when they did their Black Lives Matter march at Mansfield. That went really well. And it's not something that you would think would go well in a place like Mansfield, a rural area, but the Mansfield community really stepped out. To get back to the question, I guess, is how I would pass that along. I'm not sure necessarily on an exact answer besides just saying, relating my experiences and showing them, this is how I did this and this is why I did this and this is why, you should consider this kind of scenario. I'm not going to be able to, change anyone's perspective on things, but I guess just opening people's eyes and saying, hey, diversity, equity, inclusion, or not even talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, just anything in general is like big. And then also saying, this is how things work. You need to kind of fit into this and understand this. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that you're not seeing, kind of stuff. So.
Speaking of the behind the scenes, and as SGA president, and with SGA just in general, you guys work closely or have to work with the president here at the university and a lot of the cabinet. How do you feel you're perceived in those types of situations, and how much, I guess, weight is the best word I can think of here for that bond and that importance between you guys, your organization, and the president?
Yeah. For me as SGA president and with President Patterson, I think we have a really good relationship. He's an awesome guy. He's great. I think I've only been here for the 4 years, and we cycled through 2 presidents, I think, 3 maybe. I can't really remember, but he's definitely the best. He's great. We have a good relationship as going into like the cabinet. I definitely feel respected. I don't feel like I'm looked down upon because I'm just, a 21-year-old student who doesn't know better. I definitely think that I have a place there and that they respect my voice when I do decide to give them feedback on whatever the students may be thinking. Same in Faculty Senate. I think that they respect me there as well. I don't think people are looking down upon us because we're students, especially student leaders, because now more than ever, it's hard to get student leaders. So I think that they kind of want to keep people around.
How important is that relationship, do you feel, to make sure that the student voice is heard? How important is that bond, that respect that you guys have to keep?
Oh, it's massive. I think without that kind of mutual respect or mutual understanding, then there is no SGA almost. The SGA, we act as a liaison between the student's voice and the voice of the administration, and we're there to facilitate, advocate, educate, all that stuff to, people like Dr. Patterson or Dr. Kane, the interim dean of students, or anyone else. So if there's no mutual respect and if they don't respect our opinion, then that's kind of, students would see that and get very upset. And I don't know. I mean, that doesn't happen here at Mansfield, which is a good thing. I think from the perspective of, the faculty and administration, they've been very understanding, and students, even me as a student, don't necessarily understand everything that goes into behind the scenes of Mansfield University from a president's perspective or dean of students perspective. And they're always very nice when, you suggest something that's like completely unreasonable, but you think it's like the best idea ever. And they're just like, well, maybe we should take a step back. And they're never just shutting down your ideas or making it seem like, the student voice isn't important. They're always there for you and always there for the students. And I think that's huge at Mansfield.
The important thing as well is to you mentioned to get that pulse of the student body. Obviously, this year kind of excluded. How do you go about trying to hear the voices and get those opinions of some people who might be afraid to reach out? But what is or how do you get those opinions to be able to relay the student body pulse to the faculty?
Sure. So I guess there's kind of a couple ways. First, for the vocal students, you know what they think. Very easily you can know, okay, that this is what they want. A lot of the times, even at Mansfield, word of mouth or just hearing people, not listening to other people's conversations, but, when you walk through Upper Manzer, and someone's like, man, this is, this, or something, and you're like, oh, okay, so the students feel that. Some students feel that way. But another huge thing for me, and it's kind of separate from student government, is being a resident assistant at Mansfield and talking to my residents and understanding, like, hey, like, what do you guys like to see in programming, and what are your interests, and how do you feel about this, and this, has definitely helped me be a better leader on this campus. I wouldn't know. I try to, like, put myself in other things so I can understand perspectives. This semester, obviously, like you said, not really a lot of stuff to be in, but in previous semesters, I try to go to other people's meetings and other things just to understand, what's the perspective, talk to Greek life, talk to people in athletics, what's happening there, what do you want to see, give me some feedback. But the RA job has honestly been the biggest influx of knowledge for me from what the students want to see, because they have to like answer like surveys and stuff like that. So and we knock on their door with a bag of candy and it's like, tell us about yourself. So that's always been a huge help.
I was gonna say, because I was gonna bring back the Res Life situation and talk and say, is this something for anyone who wants to be a president of their student government at their school? Do you feel like that Res Life experience for you is crucial for someone who wants to do this to keep the pulse, or is that something that you found is just a massive benefit for you?
That's a good question. I think it could be different depending on each person, right? If you're wanting to be the SGA president, you probably have a certain charisma about you, or a leadership style that people want to follow, or something in that nature. So completely just talking from the information side, for me it was crucial. I know if I didn't have the RA position, there's a lot of stuff that would have went right over my head, and then I would look like I'm not listening to the students, but then I just didn't know how to get their feedback, right? As SGA president, you're not going to go into Spruce Hall and knock on every single person's door and ask them, what they want to see. That's just unrealistic. Do I think it's necessary? No. I mean, there's been SGA presidents who haven't been in residence life. But do I think it's a massive help? Yes, definitely. I think it improves the quality of your understanding of the student body by a lot. And in a semester like this, where feedback is hard to come by, fill out a survey and get a $25 gift card, and people are still like, nah. So it's like, people are in their rooms, people are secluded. The RA job has been a huge help this semester in understanding the student perspective. But in every semester it has. Definitely not required, but huge boost. Huge.
The other thing, too, going along with that, and perhaps being an RA helps with this side, is that, you mentioned there are different groups who have different things that they want to think of, whether it's athletics, the music department here, people who have very specific things that they want to get done, and trying to find the balance. And sometimes I'm sure you've seen making people angry that you have to figure out which is more important at the time. how difficult is finding that balance to not weigh someone's over the other, but to find those things that will be the most beneficial for you guys to attack?
Sure. It's funny you say that, because that's kind of like one of the biggest things as being an SGA executive board, at least for president and treasurer, is when it comes to people submitting their requests, because SGA here at Mansfield works differently from other SGAs in PASHI system. We work as the student government and as an activities council, where other PASHI schools have the separate SGA and have the activities council. So we're both, which means that we accept or we see the requests from other student organizations. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. For I guess kind of what you're talking about is, how do you navigate that? Because you're not going to approve every request. You're not going to approve the full amount for every request. And there are some times when people get angry that you are not approving their request, or they get angry that, you're not seeing it from their perspective fully. But I think kind of navigating that is one of the good things about SGA. Maybe not everyone thinks it's a good thing, but is having bylaws and constitutions, and that sort of thing with the Committee on Finance and then SGA, is we have these set rules. If you do not follow these rules, you do not get this kind of thing. Or, we're doing this because of this rule. It kind of helps us protect ourselves from not just being like, oh, we can't approve that because we don't want to, which is never what the case is. We always want people to do what they want to be able to do. But from a kind of mental health perspective, though, looking at, things weighing on you, I know at least as president, there have been a couple of times where, we haven't been able to approve something, or we had to scale back because of lack of funding for this semester, where it's kind of like, people are upset with you. And then as a president, you have to understand that people are going to be upset with you. You can't let it get you down. I think at first I was like, man, I didn't think people were going to be so mad at me about this. But I think just being able to overcome that and, understanding, I understand your perspective, but this is how this has to be, makes you look like a good leader, but it also helps your own mental health and not you can't please everybody.
Is that a difficult thing to grasp? Because I know for a lot of people it can be the exactly that, sometimes you're going to have to disappoint because you have to go through things. Is that a hard concept to grasp?
I think it could be. As an RA, I kind of had that hit me a little bit early, especially as an RA, you have to write reports on people, if the residents are doing something that they shouldn't be. And then that resident knows you reported them and hates you. They hate you. So it's like, it's something that it's like, wow, I didn't expect that. They see you, they give you a glare because, you reported them or something like that. So I think it's definitely something I learned early on. So when I became SGA president, I'm used to it. But I think it is something that people have to understand and overcome, and you only get it by experiencing it. And you only get over it by experiencing it. Because if you're in a leadership position like an RA or being, student government executive board, you're not supposed to be someone who's so cold that they don't care about what other people think, because that's kind of our job, is to care about what other people think. So, you have to get over it at some point. You have to understand where they're coming from and move past it, I guess, is better than saying get over it.
Yeah, so actually you bring up the point with the RA, and that probably has helped ease a little bit of that for you. Obviously, especially with other groups, and I'm sure you've seen this, people are emotional about the things that they want to do, and trying to circumnavigate that and figure out a way to still support them without completely pushing all the dominoes into place. I get it. One thing that I want to have that kind of transition to then, in terms of hearing from the student body, and sometimes you get that breakdown. Have you had an experience of trying to build up that relationship with you guys and a group that, say, potentially before you got in, there was that divide. How do you go about when there is a break in a relationship, rebuilding that relationship with SGA and the other organization?
That's a good question. In the terms of SGA breaking a relationship with an organization, I don't know necessarily that we fully broke a relationship, but I guess I can give kind of an example with a request. I believe this was a year ago or 2 years ago. I know the music department wanted to send their students to, I believe it was Germany, for the choir. I believe it was the choir. And SGA had reduced the amount of what we were going to pay them. I wasn't president at this time. And I know there was a lot of back and forth, and it was kind of like tension and definitely butting heads with some things and disappointment, anger. But I think almost the way you rebuild those relationships is kind of just being a different person than the person before you. I know that that's kind of cliche to say, but when I became president, like, I don't feel like I have any bad relationships or beef with any club or organization or anybody. I think that sometimes people hold a grudge, and then they're not going to let go of the grudge until something changes. And it's hard to facilitate a change when you're not like the guy, which is a lot of things. A lot of a perspective is being SGA president, you're the guy to go to. And if you're not the SGA president, if you're, say the secretary, then maybe that person wouldn't want to talk to you because they don't think that you're important enough, which secretary is awesome. Shout out to SGA secretary, Brianna Morgan. But I think you understand what I'm saying, that it's kind of this perspective where you're not going to rebuild a relationship unless you're reaching out, and you're reaching out from a position that they respect, which can be difficult as a student, especially when you're dealing with other students. Because I think the hardest thing is to gain the respect of other students, not the faculty and administration. I think gaining the respect of the other students is so hard. And if you're not like the top guy, they're not going to bother to talk, kind of thing. Sometimes. I don't want to like badmouth the students. That's not what I'm doing. But.
No, I just get, look, I think just it's human nature to get emotional and emotionally invested in things. And when sometimes they don't go the way you want, you have a reaction. And I understand that, and trying to navigate that growth and that development and that bond that you still have and you're still supposed to have with the student or the students in general. I can see how that can be challenging at times, even if you, like you said, with this situation that really was not on you, but still having to then try to rebuild that kind of relationship with this group. I understand that. Switching gears slightly, I want to ask about time management, because you've just listed off some of your roles here, and do you sleep is my first question. But no, in terms of your time management, how do you go and approach that to make sure you get all of the things you need done with classes, and even going back to before all the classes were online, when you had in-person classes? Is that a incredibly challenging thing for you, or did you find a strategy?
I'm going to surprise you by saying that I do not have a planner. I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that someone like me doesn't have a planner. And even funnily enough, a lot of the times before, so this semester has actually kept me more on top of meetings than ever before, because all of the administrators are putting their meetings into the Outlook calendar because it has the Zoom link in it. They didn't do that before. I actually just remembered things. I'll be like, oh, I have a meeting at 12:30 I have to go to. Like, I didn't write it down. I just remembered, which was crazy now that I'm thinking back at it, because I would just function that way. Like, oh, I got that at 12:30, got this at 1, got this at 2, kind of thing. Definitely more this semester I've definitely been keeping track, because there is more online meetings than I've ever sat through in my life this semester, with integration and all this other stuff. Being on a subcommittee of some subcommittee is like, it's all over the place. So I think for time management, I've always been someone who can understand the work-life balance. When it comes to the RA job, they always say, you're working 24/7. You're always on the clock, is what they say. With the SGA job, I'm also always on the clock technically, because I'm supposed to be there for students no matter what. But the good thing about time management is you can make time for yourself if you care enough, depending, I guess, on the situation. But for me as SGA president, I find time to hang out with my friends. I find time to, eat and sleep. I mean, although I don't sleep as much as I should because I stay up late, but I find time to do these things. I think the best thing that you can do for yourself, if you're someone who has, a busy schedule, is go through, make a schedule, print out, a full 24-hour sheet, Monday through Saturday or Sunday, and just fill out, what you have to do in that whole thing. We have to do that for the RA job. We have to do that. And it helps. And then what you do is you take a couple hours in the day that you have free and schedule that for you. You time, or friend time with friends, or, on Saturday I'm going to go out to dinner to treat myself for the week or something like that. I think that's really important. I think the problem with a lot of students, not even talking about student leaders, just students in general, is they don't appreciate themselves. They don't appreciate the work that they're doing. So they lose track of not only why they're there, or maybe not why they're there, but why they matter, or if they're doing a good job or not. That's kind of one of the things I always push for people, is to appreciate yourself, because not everyone has the opportunity to be in a college campus, but also if you're still here, that means you're doing a good job. So, appreciate yourself and love yourself is huge. I know that's kind of derailing from the conversation, but for time management, for me, it's always been so weird. You could ask any one of my close friends that I do not have any sort of organized list of what I have to do at all, which is crazy. But I don't know. Outlook calendar is great now.
Hey, as long as it gets done, I understand that. And yeah, it's interesting you talk about the making time and the trying to figure out times for yourself to just breathe and relax. And I think that's a very important thing too, that we've seen actually with the current stage of the world, really, and with this pandemic, that more people need to hear that. So I think that's very good advice to give to anyone, not just students here, to just everyone who's dealing with a similar situation that we're in. So going to this year, has that changed? And you said Outlook calendar, but you mentioned with SGA having to be a part of integration meetings as well, and students' concerns with integration. I'm sure you've heard a lot of that from your office. And obviously we're still in the process of figuring things out, but as the SGA president, and especially because, as a senior, you might not see directly what this means. What is your goal and your biggest point you want to get across in these integration meetings to benefit the students that you've seen?
Yeah. I guess from my perspective as a senior, you're right. Like, I'm leaving. These things won't affect me, but I definitely care about the students who are going to be here after. With being in these integration meetings, the thing that I have stressed and that I want to continue to stress, and I understand integration is going to happen. It's something that we have to, move forward together, be on board with. One of my main concerns, I guess, and my goal is to not have this happen, is the lack of, I guess, the separation of schools creating this, major divide. So in the sense of, I know a lot of people, have talked joked about, oh, well, like Bloomsburg's going to be the business school. And, if you go to Mansfield and you have a business degree, you're going to have to do, you'll do your gen eds, and then all your business courses will be online at Bloomsburg. And, nothing's finalized, obviously, but that is a concern. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke, but it's also a concern that, what happens when, integration happens, and then let's just take that as an example. Let's say Mansfield is the music school, and then you go to Bloomsburg with a, music ed degree. Do you have to drive to Mansfield to take your music classes? I mean, that wouldn't seem realistic. And that's not what their goal is. I know that's not what their goal is, but my biggest concern has been the increase in online classes. I think this semester has shown how ineffective online learning is. I'm a big proponent that online learning is like maybe not the best for the general population. I think there's a lot of people that can do online learning and it's great for them. But for the general student population, I think online learning can be a challenge, teaching yourself, especially when you've sat through elementary school, middle school, high school, and most of your college life being taught to then just teach yourself, like flip of a switch, is just not really realistic. But my goal is to make sure that with integration, things at Mansfield hopefully stay the same in the sense where just because you go to one of these 3 PASHE schools doesn't mean that your education should be diminished in some way, or that your quality of education, I should say, should be diminished. The fact that, maybe you don't like learning online, you don't like taking online classes. Does this integration mean you need to take more online classes? Not necessarily, but that's something that that's something that I definitely wanted to stress. I think a lot of the students who agree that online courses have been just abysmal. So, I mean, that's my main goal. And then my secondary goal, just to, I guess, add on, is keeping Mansfield. Mansfield was the number one priority at first. Are we going to keep the mascot? Are we going to be Mansfield University? Or my friends and I, we joked about being Manshavenburg or Lockfieldburg or something like that. My one friend drew up a sketch of Mansfield Mountie with wings and the Bloomsburg dog head. Or the husky head. It was very funny. But definitely staying Mansfield University was my biggest concern. And they did assure me that, I guess I can say this publicly, that, Mansfield University will be Mansfield University. We will not be, PASHE School 2 or something like that. And, the traditions and stuff of Mansfield will stay at Mansfield. And when you graduate Mansfield, it will say you graduated from Mansfield University kind of thing. And that aspect was massive.
You mentioned something there, and it doesn't have to necessarily do with integration, but Mansfield is a very tradition-laced university. How important, from the student perspective, do you believe a lot of Mansfield's traditions are?
I think they are important. I think that we could do more. I think that we could have more traditions. I think some of the traditions that we have were solely based on being in person. So a lot of them kind of we weren't able to see this semester. At least student traditions. Yes. I know there's a lot of other traditions that happen, but something like, the big Spring Fling concert has always been something huge at Mansfield University. And then something that I actually tried to start was, I'm not sure if you remember when Hunter Hayes came here in the fall, I wanted to do a fall fest. Was a tradition I wanted to start. Unfortunately, COVID took that away. But, and there's a lot of other things that we do here, even micro scale, a lot of traditions within Greek life and a lot of traditions within other things that people do strictly kind of at Mansfield. I think there's more that we can do, and even small, like late night breakfast. Everybody loves late night breakfast. People line up all the way around. So, I think keeping that kind of stuff is so important. But I think even just besides the traditions is, no one's going to want to go to Mansfield University if Mansfield University isn't even Mansfield University. So I think that's been the biggest thing with integration, was making sure that we are who we are still, no matter what. That was my goal. But hey, I hope people start new traditions. I hope someone does another fall festival.
So maybe in line with that, this may also be a really loaded question, so I apologize. But what do you want your takeaway when you cross the stage, get your diploma, graduate? What do you want your biggest takeaway from Mansfield University to be?
Wow.
Again, I'm sorry. It's a massive swing, but
I know I kind of ramble on these questions, so I apologize. But honestly, I mean, the biggest thing for Mansfield from me is the people I've met here. I've met some of the most amazing people here. My friends, my girlfriend I met here, the faculty, the staff, like the experiences I've had with these people and the friendships I've made, I will never forget. And that's definitely been the biggest thing. Besides furthering my career, which, that's what college is for, but that's also a huge part. But man, I mean, the experiences that you have at a small campus with your friends, just like being a senior and, a second semester senior and just being like, I'm going to leave this place is crazy. Because, I wake up in my bed every day here in Mansfield. I'm like, oh, another day in Mansfield, time to go to Manzer. But, I'm going to like miss going to Manzer when I'm out of here, which is crazy to think about. So, I think just having those relationships with those people and building those connections, not even from a professional side, like networking, just from a personal side, has been so amazing.
Fantastic. All right, now on this show, we have had 2 specific questions that we ask every single one of our guests that really have nothing to do with anything. Okay. They're just a great way to end the show. The first one is, what is your go-to meal to impress? It can be one you make. It can be a place you go to impress, but your go-to meal, if you're told you have to impress somebody, what is your go-to meal?
Okay. So I'll give you 2 answers here. If I have to cook, I'm making chicken parmesan. That's one of the only things I can make really well. So that's what I'm going to make. If I'm bringing someone out, and let's just say it's a medium expensive dinner, not, I'm not going to go to like Ruth Chris Steakhouse or something like that and spend like $300. But if I'm just going to take someone out, I would say Texas Roadhouse.
All right. Nice. Yeah. And the second question here, as SGA president, I'm sure you do a lot of public speaking. I've done a lot of public speaking. A lot of people have to do speaking, but sometimes it doesn't always go the way we want it to. So I am going to ask for your worst public speaking experience. However, you do not have to explain it fully. It's just 3 words or phrases that describe your worst public speaking experience. And there will be no follow-up question, I promise. For example, mine is high school, appliances, bleach. And there will be no follow-up question. So what is your 3 words or phrases for your most embarrassing public speaking moment?
Oh, I'm trying to think of the phrase. I know exactly what the most embarrassing moment is, and I'm trying to. I'll give a phrase, and then I have to tell you because it was so bizarre. So, I'll say, high school, FBLA, cut short maybe. So I was up on stage for regionals, and I was giving this speech, and I didn't know that they didn't want me to give a speech, and they just took me off stage. And it was like the weirdest thing. They just like stopped everything. Microphone just turns off. And they're just like, come on. And I'm just like, what is happening? And it was the strangest thing. That was probably the funniest public speaking.
Well, I would say no follow-up question, but I'm going to give you a round of applause from in here because you went full for it. And I think you're the first one we've had who's gone full for it, unabashedly. Love it. Well, Tony, thank you so much for coming on Conversations.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I hope I didn't bore anybody.
No, we had a great show here, and we have more great shows for you coming down the line. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of Conversations, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.